Because the video I am about to make is dealing with what YouTube is pleased to call a protected category, I will not be able to monetize it. And because it's controversial, I wouldn't even want to bother trying to argue with them. So, first of all, I'm going to tell you that I would appreciate it if you would help contribute to this channel by buying me a coffee or clicking one of the other links below. They're all in the description. I am Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I'm also on Twitter, Gab and Parler, where I let you know when I've uploaded a new video, and this could be important because I understand that YouTube isn't that careful about notifications. Also, links in the description. And you can help my channel. If you can't help it financially, you can certainly help it by liking this. Click that like button, and by sharing, and also by subscribing, or again, if you're on YouTube, checking that your subscription is still active. Okay, so I'll get on to this. It's an article in the New York Post, which is, generally speaking, a very forthright paper, but not as forthright as all that in this case. Hamline, I hope that's Hamline, it might be Hamlin, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Hamline University professor fired for showing images of Muhammad had warned students in syllabus. So she's doing a course on art. She used this image here and warned the students in the syllabus that there would be images of Muhammad. Now, before I carry on, I have to tell you something about Islam. Making images of Muhammad is forbidden only for the Sunnis. The Shiites have no such stricture. And when you see a Sunni picture of Muhammad, you may see, like the vague shape of a man, but there's a veil over his face, as if he's wearing a full face veil, so you don't see his face. And but in the Shiite tradition, there is no such problem. So in fact, if you happen to be a Shiite Muslim and you're watching this, you should be very annoyed about the way the Sunnis are taking control of your traditional art. However, I'm not hearing anything from the Shiites, who should be outraged at this, and I have an idea why. It suits their purposes to allow the kafir to be so bullied. And I'll get to that in a little while. Remind me, it's a local minister told me this, well, a few years ago actually now. Okay, so here is the New York Post, and here is their version of the picture. But they are being, well, I don't know if you can call this mealy-mouthed, because this is not the picture. I'm going to superimpose the actual picture. Now you can see that in the New York Post edition of this picture, they've pixelated out Muhammad's face. I don't know what the fuss is anyway, because the Muhammad they're showing here has a black beard and hair. And Muhammad in the Quran is frequent, and in the Hadiths is frequently described as having red hair. So it's not even an accurate picture of Muhammad. But, why let a little inaccuracy like that get in the way of a good bullying session, yes? Okay, the professor reportedly warned students that a painting containing an image of Muhammad was going to be displayed a few minutes ahead of time. So the Muslim students could have left the room if they'd really been interested in just not seeing Muhammad's visage. Okay. A Minnesota liberal arts professor who was allegedly fired after showing students images of Muhammad in a class about Islamic art warned students about the works in the syllabus. I saw some Islamic art when I was studying Islamic history at university, and at the time there was no big fuss about it. Erica Lopez Prater, you know, I'm sure there are hundreds, thousands maybe, of professors and university administrators just thanking God that the woman is a Latino, or at least has a Latino name, which at least relieves them of the responsibility of being called, of the possibility of them being called white supremacists in this. Yeah, so, you know, Allah's small mercies, I suppose. Erica Lopez Prater, an adjunct professor at Hamline University. Oh, adjunct professors. I mean, you might as well be a toilet cleaner for the sort of status that gives you in a university. So she was really, you know, ripe for the picking, just on the lowest rung of the ladder there. Issued a syllabus warning, warning students that the class would contain images of holy figures, including the Prophet Muhammad and the Buddha, according to a New York Times report Sunday. I really object to people referring to the Prophet Muhammad. He may be a prophet to the Muslims, but he's not a prophet to me. And I don't refer to the prophet Isaiah or even, generally speaking, to the Saviour Jesus, do I? I just refer to them by their names. And we can talk about Muhammad in that way as well, except we are taking on the Muslim idea. The prophet, that's the only one. All the rest were just sort of secondary figures, and we're driving that into our own minds every time we refer to the Prophet Muhammad. I just thought you might notice that. Prater also reportedly warned students that a painting containing an image of Muhammad was going to be displayed a few minutes ahead of time, giving anyone who might be offended by such imagery an opportunity to leave the classroom. Okay, as I said, this would affect only Sunni Muslims. So why aren't the Shiites just standing up and shouting about this? Well, this is my theory, and it comes from a comment made to me by a minister a Christian minister, who was telling me once, many years ago, about his school days. And he said he had a very good friend at school who, let's call him Ahmed. He was a Muslim, and they were both 13, 14 years old, something like that. And there was, I think it might have been the Satanic Verses stuff going on at the time. And this minister, what should I call him? Well, Paul's as good a name as any other. Paul asked Ahmed what this fuss was all about and why they were making such a fuss about it, and why it was becoming difficult to talk about anything to do with Islam in Britain at the time. And he said to me, Paul said to me, that Ahmed just stared at him and said, "You don't get it, do you?" And Paul said, "Get what?" And Ahmed said, "Look, most of the Muslims I know, they're not really Muslims. They smoke, they drink, they gamble, they go to the cinema, they watch television, they have pictures in their houses, they pet dogs. They're not that bothered." So Paul said, "Well, then what's the fuss?" And Ahmed said, "The purpose is to paralyse you English." And Paul said that gave him a jolt that set him on course for the rest of his life, because after that, when he remembered that and he decided to go into the ministry, and I suspect that was part of the reason, because he said to me, when he saw the look in Ahmed's eyes, it truly frightened him. He said he saw something really nasty in the look the look that was coming out of his eyes. I suspect that Paul thought he saw the devil there. Now, obviously, that was one person. I'm not saying all Muslims. As Ahmed said, there are many Muslims who couldn't care that much about Islam, but there are some who are making a fuss about such things for the reason he gave. They want to make the people in this country and others, in this case in America, insecure about what they can and cannot say about Muslims. And when you're not that secure about it, then you're likely to comply more easily. You are paralysed. You don't know what decisions to make. Now, Shiites, they don't mind seeing pictures of Muhammad or representations of Muhammad, but they are staying silent here because they have that agenda too, and this suits their purposes as well. That is a theory I have developed after hearing what Paul told me about his ex-school friend. And so I may be entirely wrong. I do know that there are many Muslims who don't like this sort of thing and stay out of it, but they do tend to stay quiet because of the retribution that would follow if they did try speaking up. There are also Ismaili Muslims. I keep talking about those because they are thoroughly integrated Westerners. And even, by the way, the Tatars, they're Muslims in Poland, you know, and in the Crimea. And many of them were moved out by the Russians during Russia's rule in those areas. But still there are some, and they are also integrated into the societies within which they're living. So I'm not saying this is all Muslims, but what I am saying is that there are two strains, Sunni and Shiite, the big sects, and they are pursuing this path. Right, well, let's carry on with this. Despite the multiple warnings, a senior student in the class, obviously somebody who wanted to impose his or her presence on the college. I mean, that's obvious because they could have just gone, couldn't they? A senior student in the class later complained to administrators about the imagery and picked up support from Muslim students who were not in the class, resulting in Prater not being welcomed back to the school and setting off national controversy surrounding academic freedom. And so, as I said, the New York Post published this bowdlerized version of the picture in question, which involves, I suppose, Jabril, the angel Gabriel, giving the Quran to Muhammad. And this is Twin Cities Pioneer Press, and they deal with the same story, but do you notice the... Oh, hang on a minute. It's not loading. Right, okay, here we are. The same story. Do you see an illustration? No. Oh, yeah, I've got to log in. Well, I can't do that. But there is no representation at all. I have actually seen this, so because it's been hanging around on my desktop, it's gone into register mode. But I can tell you, the only picture in this article is a picture of Hamline University, one of a building, a very nice piece of architecture, by the way. I don't know if it's the only building, but it's some sort of a mock ancient building, as far as I remember. Okay, so they were really chickening out on that. All right, what else do I have in my notes? No, nothing. That's it. I was just warning you, first of all, that the Sunnis may not like pictures of Muhammad, but the Shiites really have no religious objection at all, and yet they're not saying anything. They are allowing the Sunnis to take this over. They probably feel like this is the Sunnis fighting on their behalf, but what is actually happening is that Sunni Islam is swamping Shiite Islam, and the Shiites are allowing them to do that for political reasons. Well, I'm sure that won't help ultimately. I just thought you should know that if you happen to be a Shiite Muslim and you're watching this. Right, and as for the Sunnis, well, we have Ahmed's word on what their programme is in this sort of case. And please remember, I'm not going to be able to monetize this, so yeah, just remember me. Try and help in any way you can, and that includes sharing, of course, as well as financially contributing. Okay, well, that's it. Think I've told you everything. Yep, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or granbow with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.